Hey guys, what's up? I'm going to make a little quick video talking about today's lesson, which is factoring. And specifically, we're going to be factoring out a GCF. So I'm going to teach you how to do that today. It's going to be awesome. You're going to love it. And if you don't love it, I'll give you your money back, okay? So all that money that you pay me, I'll give it right back to you. So to do this, you need to know what a GCF is. You probably already know that it stands for greatest common factor. So you might know that it stands for that, GCF, greatest common factor, and that might be as far as it goes here. So let's break it down, break it down. What is a factor? A factor is a number that goes into something. How many times does it goes into? So think division, because that's how it works. Is it divisible by this? So when we think factor, think, does it go into? And think divisible by. Divisible. So does it go into it? I'm going to say that a lot. Common means it goes into everything. All goes into all terms. So it goes into all the terms. And then greatest, it means obviously the biggest. So once you find that common factor that goes into the terms, make sure it's the biggest one. Make sure there's no other common factors that are bigger than that one. So when you take a look at this example down here, I'm going to look at the numbers first. A factor can be a number, but it can also be a variable with an exponent. So it could also be powers. So it can be numbers, it can be variables. So we're going to look at the numbers and the variables when we do this greatest common factor. So let's start with the numbers. What goes into 6 and 18? So what's common to 6 and 18? Right off the bat, I see they're both even numbers, so I know that one of the factors could be a 2. So I'm just going to kind of write a little list of factors here. I won't normally do this, but 2 goes into both of those. What else goes into them? Is there any other numbers that go into 6 and 18? Well, 3 goes into 6, and 3 also goes into 18. So 2 is a factor, 3 is a factor. Is 4 a factor? No, 4 doesn't go into 6 or 18. Is 5 a factor? No. Is 6 a factor? Yes. 6 goes into 6, and 6 goes into 18. 6 is a factor of 18. You can divide 18 by 6 and get an even number. Well, get a whole number. So out of my list of common factors, I've got 2, I got 3, I got 6. 6 is the winner chicken dinner. It's the biggest one that goes into both of those. So my GCF is going to start with a 6. But wait, there's more. Let's look at the common factors in the variables. Is there a common variable? And you're like, yeah, they both have an X. So they both have an X. That's true. But how many X's are common to both of those? X cubed is like saying X times X times X. And X to the first power is just X. So how many of those do they have in common? Well, they both have at least 1. So X to the first power. All right. I know that X cubed has some extras, but those extras aren't common to this guy. So as far as the GCF goes, we got 6 is our common factor for those 2 coefficients. And then X to the first power is the common one for those X variables. So my GCF is 6X. Cool. So those can both be divided very nicely by 6X. Okay. What we're going to do today is we're going to factor out 6X. It's more than just dividing. It's factoring it out, and you're going to have some leftovers, and we're going to see how that goes in a little bit. But our first couple examples are just finding a GCF. So the biggest number that goes into both of them and the common variable with the amount of exponents that's common to both terms. Or, could be 10 terms. Who knows what we'll see as we move to the next problem. Bam! All right, 3 terms. We got a trinomial, and we want to know the GCF. So I'm going to start just like I did the last one. I'm going to look at the numbers. The numbers. So when you look at those numbers, what do they all have in common? What's a number that goes into 12 and 8 and 6? The first number that jumps out in my mind is 2. 2 goes into all of those. 2 goes into 12 6 times, goes into 8 4 times, goes into 6, goes into -6, -3 times. So 2 goes into all of those. Is there something bigger than 2 that goes into all of those? Well, I know 4 goes into this guy. 4 goes into this guy, but 4 doesn't go into that guy. So no, I could have tried 3. 3 does go into that guy, but not that guy. So no, 3 doesn't work. 4 doesn't work. 5 won't work. 6, let's check 6. Maybe 6 will be the magic number. 6 does go into 12 2 times, but 6 does not go into 8. 8 divided by 6 is not a pretty number. So 6 doesn't work. And then I know nothing bigger than 6 will work because that is a 6. So that's a little trick, you'll only go up to 6. Nothing bigger than 6 will go into 6. Doesn't make sense. Alrighty, guys. So 2 is my common number. That's my biggest number factor that goes into all these coefficients. 2. All right, now let's look at the variables. They all have an x in common. You see that. They all have an x. But how many x's do they all have in common? This is an x to the 5th power. This is an x to the 4th power. And the third term has an x to the 3rd power. So you notice that they all 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. They all have 3 x's in common. Yeah, these guys have some extras, but they all have 3 common x's, x to the 3rd power, in common. And you might notice that it's always going to be your variable, your common variable is always going to be the one with the lowest exponent, okay? So 2x to the 3rd power is our GCF there. Doing good so far, guys. Well, at least I am. Oh, guys. So these are for you to try. So if you want to pause the video and give it a shot, pause the video right now. So if you pause the video, then that means you just unpaused it and you did these problems, and your GCF would be, well, let's see, the number that goes into 15 and 18. The only common factor I can think of is 3. 3 goes into 15. 3 goes into 18. I don't have any other common factors. And, you can always do it the long way, 15 and 18. The factors of 15 are 1, 3, 5, and 15. That's all the numbers that can be divided by 15. And the numbers that go into 18 would be 1, 2, 3, 4, no, 5, no, 6, yes, 7, no, 8, no, 9, yes, and 18. So you could always make a list of factors if you're unsure. That list of factors would show you, hey, 1 is common, 1's always common. And then the only other common one would be the 3. So 3 is the biggest. And then we notice this guy has an X, but this guy doesn't have an X. Okay, so there is no common X. The GCF is just 3. So hopefully you got that one right. If you didn't, fix it and try to get the next one right. Now, there is a twist on the next one because it starts with a negative number. If it starts with a negative number, our GCF is going to start with a negative number. Sorry, dudes. That's going to make things a little more confusing later on down the road, but for right now, just if your polynomial starts with a negative, our GCF starts with a negative. So what goes into 18, 6, and 24? Well, 2 does, 3 does, 4, no, 5, no, 6 does. 6 is the biggest common factor for all of those terms. So our GCF will start with a negative 6. Negative because the polynomial began with a negative, and 6 because that's the biggest number that goes into all of those. Then you also see that they all have y's, y. They all have y's in common. And remember the shortcut we found, you can always use the lowest exponent of those y's. They all have at least a y squared. Okay? So they all have at least a y squared. And that is a good answer. So we know how to find a GCF. In the next problem, we're going to be factoring out a GCF. So here it is, guys, the first example where we're going to actually be factoring out the GCF. So it all starts with finding the GCF. The GCF, yes. So when you find the GCF, remember, number first. What goes into 16? What goes into 4? What goes into 8? 2 goes into all those. But is there a bigger number? Maybe try 4. Does 4 go into 16? Yes, it does. Does 4 go into 4? Of course it does. And does 4 go into 8? Yes, it does. So 4 is the biggest number that goes into all those coefficients. Then we look at the variables. Do they all have an x? Yes, they do. And what's the lowest exponent of the x's? Well, it's x to the first power. Then look at the y's. Do they all have y's? Yes, they do. And what's the lowest exponent of the y's? Well, there's a y squared and a y to the first power and a y. So y to the first power. So our GCF is 4xy. So I'm going to put that on the outside here. Outside of what? Outside of these parentheses. Because it's what it's like is it's like I'm pulling out the GCF from each of these terms. So factoring is like the cousin of division. So when I say I'm pulling it out, it's like I'm dividing each of these terms by 4xy. So I'm not going to do this every time, but for the first example, yeah, it's like I'm dividing every term by 4xy, which was our GCF. So GCF goes on the outside, and I call the inside the leftovers. That's probably not the scientific name. In fact, I'm sure it's not. But we get those leftovers from doing this division. So how many times did 4 go into 16? 4 went into 16 4 times. Okay. How many times does x go into x? Well, you guys, you know, they cancel out. Goes in there 1 time. How many times does y go into y squared? Y times. So it's division, and we put the leftovers right here. All right. How many times does 4 go into 4? It goes in there 1 time. X squared over x, so you know there's an x left over. And then y over y, them suckers cancel out. And then last up, how many times does 4 go into 8? It goes in there 2 times. The x's cancel out. X over x, they cancel out. Y over y, those cancel out. And my final answer looks like that. Okay? So that's our first example, and our final answer was 4xy. 4y plus 1x plus 2. So that's how you factor out a GCF. And you notice how it kind of matches what we've been learning about dividing polynomials. All right, so here's 2 for you to try if you want to go ahead and give them a try. And then you can pause the video and then restart the video, and we'll go over it. So ready, pause. And maybe you're done, and maybe you're unpausing now, or maybe you never paused. You just lied to me. Who knows? So we're going to factor out the GCF. It all starts by finding the GCF. So the GCF, well, this has a coefficient of 1, Ooh. So since that has a coefficient of 1, the only thing that goes into 1 is 1. That's a weird one, but that's cool. That happens. Now let's look at the x's. X cubed, x squared, and x. What do they all have in common? They all have in common an x to the first power. So our GCF is just a 1x. I'm just going to write x because only nerds write the 1. And then the leftover. So as if we're dividing all of these terms by x. So x cubed divided by x. What's left over? It's x squared. 5x squared divided by x. Well, it's got a 5 on it. And then x squared divided by x. You should know that there's one x left over, x to the first power. And then negative 22x divided by x. You know those suckers cancel out. They cancel out. So the correct answer would be an x outside the parentheses. And an x squared plus 5x minus 22. Excuse me. Inside the parentheses. All right. And the next one. Factor out the GCF. Let's do it. What number goes into all of these? Oh my goodness, it starts with a negative. So our GCF is going to start with a negative. Negativo. And then what number goes into all of those? Well, they're all even, so I would start with 2. 2 goes into all of those. And then I would try another number, maybe 4. Does 4 go into 16? Yes. Does 4 go into 28? Yeah. Does 4 go into 20? Yes. So 4 works. Then I might try something bigger. I might try 6. Does 6 go into 16? No. I might try 8. Does 8 go into 16? Yes. Does 8 go into 28? No, it doesn't. So my GCF, the biggest number that I came up with was 4. Negative 4. Negative because it started with a negative. Then let's look at the variables. They all have a y. And remember, you choose the lowest exponent. That's what they have in common. So the GCF is a negative 4y cubed. Then we got to talk about the leftovers, the leftovers, the leftovers. You're going to be factoring it out. Remember, factoring is the cousin of division. So it's almost like I'm dividing by negative 4y cubed. Negative 4y cubed. Negative 4y cubed. So when I factor negative 4 out of negative 16, you got to think, what's negative 16 divided by negative 4? It's a positive. 16 divided by 4 is 4. Then look at the variables. Y to the 6. And I'm factoring out a y cubed. I'm dividing out a y cubed. So 6 on top. 6 y's multiplied by each other on top. 3 y's multiplied by each other on the bottom. 3 of them are going to cancel out. And you're going to be left with y to the 3rd on top. Our next term. Positive 28 divided by a negative. So a positive divided by a negative will give you a negative. 28 divided by 4 is 7. And y to the 4th divided by y cubed. So y to the first power. And last up, a negative divided by a negative is going to give us a positive. 20 divided by 4 is 5. And y cubed over y cubed, them suckers cancel out. So there are no y's left. And my final answer is this, and it's beautiful, just like you. Yeah, okay, that got weird. Anyway, I hope you learned something. Get some practice. I'll post some more good stuff on the Canvas page, and get your assignments done. Bye.